Okay, we're at the top of the hour. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Ryan Schmier, Vice President of Operations for Spark Services North America. And I'd like to welcome you all to our first in a four-part webinar series on the journey to model consistency from model validation to model governance. This presentation today will be talking about how do you author success and setting the foundation for what model quality is all about. I'm joined today by our two speakers, Dr. Istvan Rat, Managing Director of IncQuery Group. Welcome, Istvan. And Chris Armstrong, President and Chief Architect of Armstrong Process Group, who is also involved with our Spark Services North America organization. So Chris, welcome.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
And let me hand it over to you guys to go ahead and get us started on the presentation. As we get started, there is both a Q&A and a chat feature here within the Zoom platform. If you do have questions, please go ahead and log them in either one of those two sessions, and we will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. Istvan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ryan, and thanks again for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join our webinar today. And just to set it off, I will start with a little bit of an introduction to IncQuery, and then I will hand it over to Chris. So basically, IncQuery is all about creating digital engineering success. We've been working for many years in the industries, aerospace, defense, mobility, biomedical devices, and many others. Basically helping our customers with MBSE. Complexity challenges around that, designing processes and tool chains, increasing productivity, closing productivity gaps, and of course, developing quality assurance solutions, which will be the topic of today's presentation. And now, Chris, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Istvan. So just a little bit about APG. Our whole reason for being here is to really help end user organizations adopt industry standard best practices and deliver world-class outcomes. Play a lot in the enterprise architecture and systems engineering fields, and a part of that mission is to participate in the contribution of industry standards, including ones that are relevant to some of the things we'll be talking about today, particularly UML, SysML, and UAF at the OMG, but we've also participated in enterprise architecture initiatives at the Open Group, namely TOGAF and Archimate, and the IT for IT reference architectures, as well as being involved in a number of key work groups at INCOSE. And as Ryan said, we're also the operator for the Sparks Services franchise here in North America. So, I'll kind of, start off, setting the stage for, why we think we need, some kind of model validation support. And then Istvan's going to take over a little bit later and get a little bit more, show you guys a little bit more about the solution and the validator that IncQuery's created. So, let's, take a step back and, what is model quality and what are some of the different dimensions? Namely, we think that there's, three different areas we need to be mindful about. Just the casual mistakes that people can accidentally make when they're building a model. As many people may know, if you guys are users of Enterprise Architect, which I presume you probably are, which is why you're here in this webinar, is that Enterprise Architect, on the one hand, is a permissive modeling tool in the sense that it allows you to, build models using many different languages, and, exactly how you use them is really left to the end user. So that's both a good thing because it gives you a lot of that flexibility, but it also can be a liability as it relates to making sure that you fill out all the right properties of your elements and relationships and the diagrams that you build. There is a point where you do need to be concerned about that. There's also the tailoring of the of how you're using the tool and the modeling languages to support a particular methodology. Whether that's the SysMod methodology, OOSM, your own homegrown architecture or engineering or development process. And then, of course, there also comes a point when you need to be concerned about, how conformant and compliant are we with the different semantics and syntax of these various languages. And so the idea behind this, of course, is that, having consistency across the projects that we build, particularly in a large enterprise where we have a lot of different teams, is important. So kind of like in development, where we like to have coding standards, where you can't really see and understand who built different pieces of code based on the style. We want all those models to look, have at least some familiarity and regularity. We also, I think, understand from practice, and of course, this has been brought up by empirical studies, that if we discover issues earlier on in the process, that tends to be something that has a downstream effect of being more expensive and more risky. So the earlier we can find issues, the better. We also, if we have the ability to give people real-time feedback to, how well they're, again, avoiding these common mistakes, conforming to our adopted methodology and the standards that we're using, can really help provide good feedback to modelers that are building this content, so they can get, better. Because, certainly wouldn't be an aspiration that we could build, error-free models at some point. But as many of you guys know, because of the complexity of these languages and the nuances, it's really tough for that to be a first-class goal. But any way that we can, again, inform people about, hey, you shouldn't be, you should fill in this property, you need to draw this type of connector between these types of elements, is going to improve the performance and maturity of the modeling team. And so, today's, we're going to be focusing, again, we're kind of be spreading this over a series of 4 webinars, as Ryan said at the beginning. So we're going to start off with some of the quote unquote simple stuff. What does it mean? What do we mean by common mistakes? So an example one, is shown here. As you might guess from the frame, as well as being familiar with the SysML or UML and Enterprise Architect, this is a very simple state machine. And so here we just have a situation where there are transitions between nodes that don't follow the rules. So for example, the one on the left that's highlighted in red, that's a case where an outbound transition from a choice pseudo state, does not have a guard, and that is required because, of course, in interpreting this, visually by looking at it, you go to the choice, and there's supposed to be a guard on all outbound transitions, so that when we're, possibly executing this, simulating this, or of course people are using this for specifications for testing, that it's clear exactly what conditions trigger us going left, right, forward, or backwards. And this, again, might appear to be an innocuous, simple, certainly simple kind of error, but this could have, non-trivial downstream consequences. Namely, as different people, particularly downstream consumers, look at this model, they might not know what that means. Does that mean that there isn't a condition? You forgot the condition? Exactly how are we supposed to interpret it? And then as people start then building solutions based on these models, there may be unintended side effects that are introduced because of that ambiguity. And in certain cases, depending on what the subsystem or component is, there could be a potential, non-trivial cybersecurity issue in the product that we end up delivering. And these are just a couple of examples of a set of rules that have been put together by the SAIC organization. That's a part of their digital engineering validation tool set, which the IncQuery product has an out-of-the-box implementation for. And so, where do these errors come from? Well, part of it is a lack of expertise. So, of course, people that are, beginning their voyage into more formal modeling, particularly around MBSE, model-based systems engineering, but also for, enterprise architecture and software development. The tools and the languages have a lot of features and capabilities, but it's not always clear to people that are new to it which are the important ones. It's real easy to focus on a certain perspective and accidentally or unintentionally ignore another. So again, unfamiliarity with the tool and the language is a contributor for this at the beginning. There's also a lack of attention, and I don't mean that pejoratively in the sense that people don't care and aren't paying attention. But modeling is a means to an end, an important one, of course, for engineering and architecture. But we all understand the pressures that we're under on a day-to-day basis, to get things done, the deadlines we have to hit, other factors going on with our organization, and it's real easy to unintentionally not notice that, oh, I forgot to do this, or I should have done that, so on and so forth. And then there are, again, the invisible, or what we're calling quote unquote invisible errors. And so one of the challenges, of course, is that as a part of making the transition from using drawing tools like Visio, for example, or Draw.io or PowerPoint or whatever, we have a tendency to create a small number of large diagrams that have everything on them, because that's all you get, is the diagrams that are produced by those drawing tools. And many of you guys may know that, one of the things we want to think about, particularly in an agile modeling approach, is instead of creating that small number of large, complicated things, we actually want to do the opposite. We want to create a large number of small, focused, targeted things. And one of the consequences of that is that, again, as we're transitioning from a drawing tool to a modeling tool, is that information about a single thing in our repository might be spread out over 4, 5, or 6 diagrams. So you never are necessarily going to see everything about a particular element or connector on any given diagram. And then there are numerous properties for different things in SysML in particular that don't necessarily have graphical syntactical representations, but they are important semantical properties that you can specify in Enterprise Architect. As you may know, that would often be done in the property sheet. And so, relying on, visual inspection of diagrams and model content is just not sustainable. There's a lot of content. There's ambiguity about who should be responsible for that. It's really something that we want to make a team responsibility, not an individual contributor. And we also have the challenge that, all diagrams are liars. And what I mean by that is that, again, what you see on any given diagram is only what the author of the diagram felt was important to put on that particular diagram. So, and again, the complexity of the languages, everything going on in our worlds, make it really tough for us to stay on top of this as humans. So, Istvan?
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. And the question is, of course, these are rather high impact issues in the end, if you all consider just the example that we have shown today. So how can we address that challenge? How can we help here? And of course, the main topic of today's webinar presentation is a new product from IncQuery called the IncQuery Validator. It's basically a tool that is designed specifically to address these challenges. So essentially identifying errors in enterprise architect projects, and also doing it in a way that is really intuitive, so easy for the user to use and understand, and of course get value out of that. So not just to identify errors, but to fix them. Essentially realizing the end-to-end interpretation of this quality assurance workflow. The concept that is basically at the heart of the tool is what we call model governance. So model governance, in essence, means an approach or a practice that can be adopted as part of your MBSE process to make sure that all the 3 main pillars of model quality are addressed in a systematic and reproducible way. So namely, all the work that is done, especially in the collaborative context, is consistent in style in terms of standard conformance, for example, universally understandable across several teams in terms of being consistent with a methodology, either a standard methodology or an in-house methodology, And of course, fundamentally also free of common mistakes and anti-patterns, which are rather easy to make because of the factors that Chris has mentioned before. And of course, the tool can also be used to assess the completeness aspect, not only from a quality point of view, but also from the point of view of whether there are missing things which should be there in terms of what the methodology describes. In case you want to know more about these principles and how it's all constructed, there is a pretty comprehensive white paper available on the Sparks community website. I put the URL on the slide here below, but we will be circulating this afterwards, so you can easily look it up yourself. So I think that's more than enough for the slides for today. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of a practical glimpse into how the tool actually looks like. So how do we use it? But of course, this will be very short as we have rather limited time today. So let me just refocus the screen share on my other window here. So here in this particular setup, I already have Enterprise Architect running, open with a SysML sample project. This is actually similar to what a real-world systems design project would look like, but of course a little bit stripped down for demonstration purposes. And here you can already see how the validator looks like when it's deployed as an add-on to Enterprise Architect. So it contributes a specific view, this validation results view, to the user interface of Enterprise Architect, which already gives you kind of an idea how this looks like. It's basically already contains some results because I have run the validation already in preparation for this demonstration session. It's essentially a really long list of the findings that the validator has found in the previous run. By a finding, what we mean is essentially something that you have to address as an engineer. So there are 4 categories: fatal errors, warnings, and infos. And we can, for the sake of this demonstration today, switch off the last 3 and just focus on the fatal errors. And these are basically coming from this SAIC digital engineering validation rule set that Chris has already mentioned in his presentation. So, for example, if I, as a systems engineer, I want to do something about these findings and fix one of them, one thing I can do is just to double click on such a finding. And what the tool will do is it will adjust my focus, open up the corresponding element both on the left side in the tree and also if shown on a diagram, on its diagram representation as well, and add the red highlight to draw my attention to what is essentially the problem. This demonstration project is, of course, a little bit prepared, so there are some annotations built in the diagrams to indicate what is the issue. But if I don't have that, what I can instead do is I can also click on Open Rule Description, which will open up a browser window. And this browser will be directed directly into our knowledge base, which comes built in with the tool. So basically, all the users have access to this. And in the knowledge base, there are really useful articles for each of the rules that are supported by the tool that describe what is really the problem here, give a little bit of a context, what exactly the finding means, why it has been found. There are some built-in examples as well that help you understand what the problem is. And most importantly, down here at the bottom, there are some solution strategies included in the documentation as well, basically giving us a hint what to do in order to fix that particular error. So in this case, this state has no incoming transition, which means that that is probably a reachability issue here. So just to fix that, what I can do is very quickly add something like this here, and also fix the error by making sure that there is now an incoming transition. And if I want to see the effect of the work that I have done, I just quickly go ahead and save it, and I rerun the validation. This is done after a brief initialization phase in the background. So you will see shortly that this progress bar is going to come down into the validation results view. And while that is running in the background, I am totally free to continue working on the model, so I can explore further diagrams or make some changes or look at the properties view and so on and so forth. So basically, it's a background process. This is not a small model, but still the validation runs relatively quickly in the background. So if I get back to here, I should be able to see very quickly what the end result was. If you paid attention, you may have seen that previously there were 11 fatal errors in this view, and now there are only just 10, mostly because I fixed that error. So this is how I can see and get instant feedback in terms of quality on my work. What is really the effect of what I had done? How did I eliminate a little bit of the technical debt which was accumulated in the work? Mentioning technical debt, there is another really useful feature embedded in this standalone version of the validator, which is called the statistics view. So the statistics view really is focusing on how to visualize and make sense of the technical debt and where that is centered in the project. So this view can be ordered by this findings metric, and the findings metric is actually comprised of two numbers and the percentage. The first number is really the number of findings that belong to a particular rule, and the other number is what we call the applicability scope. So how many potential contexts the project or my model contains where the rule has some meaning. And of course, the higher this number is, that is an indication of a really significant problem area, because that tells me that out of this applicability scope, a lot of these are actually hitting findings. So I have a lot of work to do in terms of quality. So for example, one area that might be of interest to me is the state name. This is actually an error. As you can see, it's related to the completeness aspect of the model governance. So if I want to take a look at those issues and resolve some of that problems, I can go to show findings, and then basically all of these findings will be here in my view. I can focus on them. And of course, these are all states that do not have a name. So for example, again, in this case, I can just go open rule description. I can take a look at a similar description in this case, and also the resolution strategy will tell me that I will need to add the name to get rid of that particular message. Okay, so much about the live demo, and now I will go back to the presentation. Yes, so what you have seen just now in this short demonstration session is what we call the standalone variation of this tool. But as you can see, there are actually two more flavors available of this technology. So aside from the standalone, which is an add-on to EA 15 and 16, we have a team tier available as well. That is actually a standalone application that can run completely independently of Enterprise Architect, either as part of your workstation configuration or a regular toolchain. But what is much more interesting is that it can also be deployed in an automation pipeline style deployment. So it can run automatically in the background attached to your collaboration platform, either with SQL or Git, and it can basically run the same set of quality related configurations and generate reports out of that, which are HTML documents that can be navigated and used in a browser. And finally, we also have an enterprise variation of the product, which can do basically the same thing, but at scale. So work with really large repositories, work with a really large number of models, and produce thousands of reports, for example, overnight to cater to the needs of a really large and complex organization. These results can also be then integrated with Excel-based reporting solutions to really get interesting insights out of that. All of these features we will cover in the upcoming sessions of the webinar. So in the next iteration in June, we are going to take a deeper dive into some of the more subtle aspects of model governance. Then in July, we are going to be talking about what these built-in rule sets really are and how you can customize them, because it's possible to customize, to change, or even add your rules with the tools that come packaged with the product. And we are also be covering a really, really interesting and new feature of the tool, which is the profile MDG validation that is very strictly related to standard conformant modeling. Finally, in August, we are going to come back to this validation automation pipeline aspect. So how you can build DevOps style configurations that can do this automatically in your environment. If you'd like to see more of the tool in live action, you are also very, very welcome to join us at one of the upcoming conferences that we are going to be attending. So next one is the MathConf, which is in Munich in June. And then about a month later at the IncQuery International Symposium in Dublin, where Chris is also going to be joining us, and we are going to be presenting the validator in that event as well. So to conclude, what we have learned today is that, of course, the consistency of models within and across projects is really, really important. It's a prime, it has got a very strong and prime impact on the overall success and outcome of MBSE processes. The earlier we can discover and resolve errors, the more costs we can save. And of course, the better we are at managing risks in these projects. Unfortunately, because of various reasons, the visual inspection of diagrams and models is not really a sustainable approach. So instead of tackling this complexity and difficulty of SysML modeling construct, what you can do is take advantage of this new product that can help informing all the members of the team of model quality issues in real time for the purpose of maturing MBSE implementations inside your organization. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for everyone for attending. And now I guess is the time to answer some questions.
Great. So the first question that came in is, on an earlier slide, you called out Archimate as a language. Is model validation only for MBSE, or does this apply to other types of architecture modeling as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe
You
I
can
will
tackle
take.
that, Espan.
Maybe I will take this one. The short answer is no. It's not only for MBSE. Of course, for MBSE, it's of particular importance. But for example, the MDG validation feature, which I mentioned just a slide ago, so which will be covered in July, has full support for Archimate as well. So that's going to be a pretty interesting presentation for those of you who are into Archimate and using Archimate, because you will see that a lot of the Archimate work out there, which we find in organizations as customers, has a lot of issues related to conforming to Archimate properly. And this is what this tool can help to a significant degree with to resolve and identify those issues in an efficient way.
Great. So the next question, can you speak to the high-level views which link into the detailed views and the use of child diagrams, for instance? So I think we're talking about how model validation works across multiple diagrams.
Yeah, I think that was featured in the example model as well. This overview style diagrams. The validation, of course, in its core functionality is not really specific to diagrams or diagram types whatsoever. Even if you don't have diagrams at all, it will work and be of value to you. But of course, if you do have diagrams, we do have some diagram-specific validation logic as well. So as Chris has mentioned, Enterprise Architect allows you to use the diagrams a little bit in a free way or relaxed way, put things on diagrams which are not supposed to be on the diagram, for example, in terms of the SysML standard. And the validator can help you identify issues like this. So if you have a foreign artifact or element on a diagram, validator will help you pinpoint such issues. And this was just an example.
Okay, great. The next question, SysML 2 is coming out soon. or sometime. How can model validation help me get ready for migration?
Yeah, this is a really cool question. Yes, model validation is of prime importance, especially in this migration context, because you really want to make sure that your models are free of errors like this before you do migration, either automatically or manually. So the validator, I think, can be a very powerful tool in such a project, because it can really assess your work in terms of various kinds of quality metrics. And if you follow these processes, which I have been just teasing in this demonstration today, you can very easily get rid of those errors and then get really ready for migrating your work over the new standard of SysML v2.
And that's acknowledged in the SysML2 model transformation guide, that there's basically pre-processing that must be done before you perhaps choose to partially automate the transformation. So recognized by the SysML2 team as being a requisite for that. So having some support with automation is going to be really, really critical.
Right. So we're coming up on the bottom of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. There are some questions that we did not get to. I'll make sure that Chris and Istvan get those so they can respond appropriately to those. But I'd like to take this time to thank our presenters, Dr. Istvan Rath from IncQuery, as well as Chris Armstrong from Armstrong Process Group. Thank you for coming today. And thank you for all of the folks who participated and asked questions. We really appreciate this and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar, which is taking place on June 19th. Stay tuned for more information on how to register. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.